Welcome to Sickcast, brought to you by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.
Hello, Guru Fateh. Welcome to the Sickcast. Thank you for joining us. Today's podcast is going to be a rebroadcast of a webinar that took place December 5th. Bhai Vir Singh, His Fragrance Travels Through Centuries.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you for joining today's webinar hosted by the Sikh Research Institute. This webinar will begin with a 40-minute moderated discussion between our presenters, after which we will have 40 minutes of Q&A from the audience. So please drop your questions in the chat box and be sure to include your name and city. Now I would like to introduce you to today's panelists. First, we have Inni Kaur. Inni Kaur is the creative director at the Sikh Research Institute. She's an esteemed and passionate author, poet, and painter. Recently, she broadened her creative artistry into publishing a children's book series, Journey with the Gurus, that is inspired by the life and teachings of Guru Nanak Sahib. She's also passionately involved in transcreating Shabad and the writings of Bhai Vir Singh. Today, she resides in Fairfield, Connecticut, USA, and continues to bring multifaceted perspectives to her work. Dr. Nikky-Guninder Kaur Singh is the Crawford Professor and Chair of the Department of Religious Studies at Colby College in the United States. She's published extensively in the field of Sikh studies. Her books include Cosmic Symphony, the Early and Later Poems of Bhai Vir Singh, Birth of the Khalsa, and Feminine Principle in the Sikh Vision of the Transcendent, among many others. She came to America to attend a girls' prep school in Virginia, got her BA from Wellesley College, MA from the University of Pennsylvania, and her PhD from Temple University. And lastly, we have Surinder Singh. Surinder Singh is an active member of the Sikh community in Southern California. Based in Los Angeles, he is an avid student of Gurbani and Gurmat literature. He has taught Gurbani courses for adults for over 19 years at the local Gurdwara and has spoken at various other Sikh events and programs in the region. Professionally, Surinder is a practicing CPA and has managed his own firm for the past 31 years. Please welcome today's presenters.
Okay. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. It is actually such a privilege and a joy to be with you, Nikki Ji and Surinder Ji, on the birth anniversary of Paisa Bhai Vir Singh Ji, who I refer to and call reverently as Pitaji. So if you see that being, me calling him Pitaji, it's because of my relationship, which has grown through the years. So, we had this wonderful introduction from Manvinder about you, Nikki, and Surinder Ji, and both of your knowledge of Bhai Vir Singh Ji's work. You, Nikki, particularly, you actually have brought his fragrance to the West. You're the one who has translated his work. You are the one who teaches his work in colleges around the United States. And you are taking that fragrance to a much higher level. Sundarji, you bring that fragrance to us, to within the community, to within the Sikhs. You teach that. You run book clubs. You do, all sorts of things to bring that work together for him, to take that fragrance out. So I have these two incredible people who revere his work as much as I do. So I want to begin with you, Nikki. I read your essay, the essay of Bhai Vir Singh, Local Poet, Global Resource. It's a dense piece, but a wonderful piece. I would love for you to share with us, because in there you write that there are three currents or three themes that emerge from his poetry. And I'd like you to speak to those three themes, but without me having to go to my thesaurus, because honestly, when I was reading that essay, the thesaurus was right next to me. So if you could talk to about that to us, I would really appreciate it.
Thank you, Inni, Manvinder. Lovely to be with you, Surinder, too. First of all, Mubarak to us all, Mubarak to Inni Ji for her, for Pitaji's birthday, and for us all, because this is a wonderful legacy that we have inherited. And I'm very glad we are celebrating it together, his birth anniversary, Bhai Vir Singh's. I do like your title, The Fragrance, how Bhai Vir Singh's fragrance travels through the centuries. And I just want us to take a second and think about fragrance, because it's very important. It's a sense, it's delicate, it goes everywhere, does not make any differences of society, caste, class, gender. It's a very kind of a universal, what should I say, a process, a motion, and it is cognitive, it is intellectual. And I think it's one of my favorite verses from the Guru Granth Sahib is, Rasiya hove musk ka tab phool pachane. Only the person who enjoys the fragrance knows the rose. So knowledge and this enjoyment is very, very integral, connected, and you put this in your title, and that's what I hope our next hour or so is all about. Now, you asked me about, actually, I don't go around colleges. I've just stuck to my one college, Colby College, where I have been for the last 33 years, and I enjoy it very much. And my students read Bhai Vir Singh, and as you know, one of them came over in one of the conferences that you had organized. So these are American students who I have. I wish I had more Sikh, ethnically Panjabi students, but Colby is becoming more diverse in New England. So hopefully in the next few years we will. But the students are greatly inspired. They really are by Bhai Vir Singh's poetry. And instead of just the 3 that you mentioned, that you read in my recent article, I actually find 7 different aspects that are extremely crucial for our modern world. His poetry has phenomenal resonance for our contemporary society, whether we are in the diaspora, whether we are back in the Punjab. It really speaks at a very, very particular level, and at the same time, a very universal level. So what are those 7? And I will go through them quickly. I don't want to take too much time. Now, the first one is really, it's important for our identity, for our personal and collective identity. Who are we? We are Punjabis. So the language itself, especially, I've been in the West since I was 14. What gave me this love what gave me my Punjabi-ness? It was really Bhai Vir Singh, that poetry, the simplicity of it. Where do I remember my grandmother, my mother, my parents, my community? It's the language. So it's really, really, it kind of connects us, gives me who I am, my selfhood through his works. That's number 1. 2, I really started with him as to understand Guru Nanak, to understand the Sikh scripture. I was working on my PhD, and that's when I really got into Bhai Vir Singh, and it was such a reservoir. And he's an exegete. To understand the Guru Granth Sahib, to understand the Bani of the Gurus, he gives us theology, ethics, morality, aesthetics, you name it all. But I think that's Surinder's area, so I will leave it there. But he has been very important. That's all my work has been. My feminine principle was really looking at how he's a hermeneut of Sikh scripture. That's what I have been doing with Bhai Vir Singh. Other aspects. Number 3, his feminist appreciation, his feminist being, to be a woman today in the West or anywhere, this kind of sexism and gender bias, he really overturns it. Just see how many female protagonists there are for his novels, for his poetry, and women are authentic subjects. These are not kind of partial or kind of, used for the male's knowledge or anything. They know, they take the mystical journeys, they fight wars, they think, they question, and they come up with radically new ways of being in the world. So from a feminist angle, he's very, very crucial. 4, our world is so damn divided and polarized and dangerously all over we have conflicts. What do we need? Love. And Bhai Vir Singh's poetry brings out that dimension of love. Love personally, love spiritually, love romantically, love for nature. It's love that he speaks. And everywhere, whether it's through our own gurus or Radha Krishna or Sassi Punnu, he really does not make these, oh, this is Muslim, this is Hindu, this is Sikh. These are all kind of coming together, very pluralistic vision, and really shows us it's not my love is better than your love. It's love. Love transcends all divisions and polarities and opens us up to embrace the world. So that's my fourth point. Number 5 is the importance of art. Art. Again, religion can be divisive. My religion, your religion. And just think of it, whenever there is any kind of race, people are victimizing others, any kind of people want to show their hatred for others, what do they destroy? It's works of art. And Bhai Vir Singh has so many works where he really addresses the issue, how art is, it is neither Hindu nor Muslim nor Sikh, it is our art. And we can go into some of his poetry later on. But I want you to keep that tune, that in today's world, we really need art. And as Tolstoy said, it creates a community. The writer writes. How are we coming together today? It's creating a community. Bhai Vir Singh is creating a community because of a certain poem we read, a certain film we see. So his plays. So this is what brings us together. So art has it has a spiritual, it has a social function. And he, as an artist himself, I think he's top-notch artist. He brings out the significance of art. So that's very important to me. Number 6 is his emphasis on the body, senses. And that's something the Sikh world, I'm afraid, always kind of creates a division. We have faith. We believe, we are attuned at the mental level. We cannot do any of that unless we have our body, unless we have our senses, unless we smell the rose. We cannot know the rose. And so the sensuousness, the palpability, the tangibility that his poetry does is really phenomenal. It really does something to our bodies. And I think that's the beauty. And he really, and like the gurus too, that's what I've been doing with Guru Nanak. And my latest book is going to be on the aesthetics of Guru Nanak, because they give such primacy to the body, to the senses, because without it, this is Kaya Har Mandar, this is the body is the house of the divine one. And Bhai Vir Singh's poem after poem, Tur Andar, that's where which is this spiritual reservoir. And call this body bad or woman or caste or class, it really has a lot to address at the metaphysical, social, spiritual level. And the final point is his sensitivity for nature. Our world, again, just think, what are we doing with our planet today? We are trashing it. We don't care about nature. I mean, everywhere we realize the next, what are we leaving for our generation, for our next generation? We have really, really ruined our atmosphere, our lakes. And so Bhai Vir Singh gives voice to nature. And if we could only see how, if you read his poetry, every bit, the tree, the rose, the lake, they speak, they have a voice. And I think he really makes us very sensitive towards the environment and brings us that ecological sensitivity that we really need in our contemporary society. So I could go on and on, but I will leave here.
Wow. You've encapsulated so much of what I feel when I read his poetry. More often than not, I end up crying. And I'm not quite sure why I'm crying, but something within me moves so greatly. And I think it's that voice which you speak about, when he gives a voice to that lake, when he gives that voice to the water, to the rose. It is that pull that speaks to us. And now, Surinderji, I go to you.
Inni, can I just read one little poem? Because it's really, really beautiful. It's from Jeevan Ki Hai. Just to see how he does the, how nature is expressed. Chand akashan de vich firda. This is the moon is up in the skies, roaming around, wandering around. Jal vich chatti mare. Jal vich, the lake is down below chatti. I mean, how can one translate that? Just has a little peek at the waters below. Jal nirmal us jaffi paake apne vich utare. Now, it's just so beautiful. Just as you said, it makes you cry. One has tears coming down rolling down their cheeks, Jal nirmal us jaffi paake. Here is the water down below. Jaffi embraces the moon up there and brings it close to us. Just think all the embraces our mothers and grandmothers have given to us. And this so how can we mistreat our waters? How can we pollute our seas? How can we throw all that rubbish there when this is what he's giving voice and giving this kind of personifying nature? It's not romantic nature. There's more to his attitude towards nature. So you're very right. So anyway, sorry.
No, you don't have to apologize at all. I mean, this is what it is. This is what happens when lovers of literature, particularly of the poet or the author or the persona, the person who we're speaking about, get together. It's actually a tumbling of emotions, one after the other, because each one of us feels him in different ways, and that's that magnitude which is coming. It's wave upon wave. And Surinderji, you teach Pitaji's work, chamatkars, and Nikki mentioned about the Gurbani aspect of it. And I know in my own life, as you had mentioned, that he made a profound difference in your life, honestly. And Nikki, you also mentioned that you look at his work to get to know Guru Nanak Sahib. Actually, I fell in love with Pacha through Bhai Vir Singh. He made it real for me. It was like I was on this magical journey, and I was there with this whole process. So Surinderji, we have the Ashtguru Chamatkar, we have Guru Nanak Chamatkar, we have Kalgidhar Chamatkar, we have Guru Asht Chamatkar. And there are so many other of his books. But right now, I just want you to focus on the Chamatkars. Are these just mere Sakhis? Because a lot of people tell the Sakhis. What is it that this is actually not a Sakhi? Yes, it is a Sakhi, but there's something more. What is that more that is in there? So share with us.
Thank you, Inni, and thank you, Nikki-ji. You've spoken so well on his life and on a broad perspective, and thank you for having me here. Yeah, he was truly a saint poet, Sant Kavisan, I mean, and as you just mentioned, ki Chamatkar, the series, it's just not Saki, it's the darshan of his Guru Nanak's soul. Atma de darshan karande hain tonu Guru Nanak de. So it's not where he was born or una diyan udasiyan ya his life later on when he settles down in Kartarpur or something like that. When you start reading Guru Nanak Chamatkar, I truly feel when I read it was like, Sakhyat, I can see him, I can touch him. I can touch his face, I can touch his feet, I can touch his body, I can touch his soul. And not only touching his soul, but I also feel that in the Chamatkar series, he brings out the Gurbani, the aspect and he relates to that of Guruji's life. In every aspect of whatever chapter you read, So for example, if you read his childhood part wala chapter in Guru Nanak Chamatkar, he will bring out the aspect of his childhood and the nature around him. And truly, when you read it, though, you feel like you're there. It's like a film running in front of you. You can see the trees. You can see his friends around him. You can see Nanki there. You can see his taking 20 rupees from his father and Sacha Soda Karan Jande, and what happens when he comes back. He brings the fearful face when he doesn't face his father that night, So no, Guru Nanak Chamatkar is not just about Sakhis, Yes, there are Sakhis there. Yes, there are storytelling there. But Guru Nanak Chamatkar is really giving darshan to Guru Nanak's soul. Na the Atma de darshan karande hain. And whoever reads it, Didi, will get moved. There is no question. There are some chapters, obviously, like when he comes back from Udasi the first time, Pyare da Pyara. There are always certain chapters in there that are way, extremely moving, and it stays with. And these aspects that he has created together from different sources like Surya Prakash and other stuff, though, and his own imagination that comes through. But Gurbani becomes a central element in Guru Nanak Chamatkar and Kalgidhar Chamatkar also. He brings in the Shabad, he brings in the musical aspect. So many times he will use words like "Fir garaj di awaaz nal kirtan hoya, fir raag malhar di garaj di awaaz nal malhar alapya gaya." And somebody like myself who has been a student and a teacher of Gurmat Sangeet, also I relate to it probably more than a lot of other people do. And I can see that music coming through from Mardana's Rabab, and Guru Nanak Chamatkar and Kalgidhar Chamatkar. And then when you read Kalgidhar Chamatkar, Didi, you will see the difference between the two souls, Atma de vich. Ek Bala Pritam hai, jede Patna vich janam hunda, and the different perspective of Kalgidhar Pasha, the Kalgidhar Pita da janam, or ek taraf Guru Nanak Dev Ji, at the other side, how these personalities that he develops, and truly when you read them, you feel they're next to you. When you read them, you feel ki you have touched them. He touches you and everywhere, and it has a profound effect on you, long-term profound effect. And maybe when you read the Chamatkar series, you might, because the language there, and many of us are not familiar with this literary Panjabi, so sometimes you have to read a chapter more than once, to really get the end. I probably have read some chapters maybe multiple times. Every time I read it, and I take a yellow highlighter, I've kept 2 copies, ek highlight was alag rakhi hui hai, so that I don't touch them. Then I keep my notes there to speak in the class and everything. And sometimes he will bring in shabads from Guru Granth Sahib Ji, which are there, which especially, Jagannath Fairy wala chapter, for example, where he brings in the Dar wala Shabad, when these 40 swordsmen are dancing around. And truly, when you read that chapter, you feel ki really, what is fear, and he explains what fear is. Fear ki hai. And then Gurbani de Sahabnal, and he explains what fear is, and what he explains it to Mardana, So Iniji it's yes, it's Sakhis, but it's like a movie and the movie is not just the movie that the scenes that come, though, it touches your heart, it goes inside of you, and you really truly want to read about Guru Nanak Dev Ji's Banis more, because he brings it so much of Gurbani into his storytelling sessions, though. He tonu Gurbani nal bhi connect karwa dende. He connects you with the Gurbani, he connects you with the history, he connects you with the so beautifully explained nature around it, the conversations that takes place with Bhai Mardana, and also the conversation that takes place in the background of the people that he's going to meet. Mere kol koi word nahi hai. I really do not have any word to describe. If it gunge di mithai hai, unless you do it, then you find out how.
Thank you, Surinder ji. What really, and I consider myself an outsider, because I grew up with biblical stories, and so I didn't know the Sakhis. So when I came to Guru Nanak Chamatkar was with fresh eyes, with very little knowledge of Punjabi. But what I really appreciated there was the way he opens up and talks about what Naam is when he explains it to the Brahman. Is Naam just chanting? And he goes on, yes, no, it's not chanting, it's this. And then the Brahmin says, okay, so I got it wrong. So Naam is not chanting. And then he goes back and corrects. No, Naam is chanting as well. That's the first step. But then how do you bring it inside? It is that, for me, it is the way he walks us through the principles of Gurbani.
Absolutely.
That is, to me, what I love about that work, his work, is he brings me much closer to the principles of Gurbani and breaks them down so that I can understand that. I get it. It's like, okay, I get it. Because, the mind is, okay, this and then this and this. That walkthrough, he does that for me. And honestly, it's changed my life. It really has. Nikki, you...
If I may add here, both are saying he's bringing you closer to Bani. Could not agree more with you guys, as I said. But also we need to keep in mind, at the same time, Bhai Vir Singh also stretches us beyond. You read his poems, it's just not the Sikh gurus, it's the Islamic world, it's the Hindu world. Not only that, the Bible, you just mentioned the biblical stories. He has Yusuf's coat, the stars are shining and so forth in the lake. What are they shining off? Joseph's brilliant coat, colorful coat. You need to know Genesis, where his allusions are coming from. So he's a brilliant mind. He's such an intellectual that he's giving us this closer and closer, and yet bringing us, stretching us, our imagination and our creativity, bringing us to a much larger horizon.
And you get a taste of the second part of Guru Nanak Chamatkar, that towards the end, where there's a chapter called Sabte Vadda Sat Guru Nanak, where he really compares, with Buddhism, and there's depth of knowledge and about all other religions and where we are versus what we say, Islam nal, Hinduism nal, Jain mat nal. It shows depth of knowledge of other religions, also in there. I totally understand what you're saying, Nikki ji. I absolutely 100% agree with you. Or you have to read him. You have to take that first step,
So there's a vastness which he brings into each of his, because he stretches the mind. I mean, I remember when I was translating Preet Veena, I was just like, who thinks like this? That form of poetry was Dante, was something which I had read in the classical, and here I was reading it in Panjabi and, with Pitaji, and it was actually, it's so romantic and yet so spiritual, both sides. And you're literally, I was like, who writes like this? And you fall in love with the words, with the construction of the sentences and everything. And to look at life like that sensitivity of the way, particularly in Preet Veena, and he writes about, it's about a relationship. And he writes a lot about a relationship. And what, Nikki, you had mentioned also about love. And then I want to go back actually to, Nikki, what you began with, that you read from the book, What is Life? Jeevan Ki Hai. Because I was thinking all of us at this point in time, at some point in time in our lives, ask that question, what is life? And
especially with the pandemic,
Yes.
It's going on, we have time, we don't go out. What means the most to me? Who am I? What am I? I mean, this is kind of a perennial question. Plato asked it, the Upanishads ask it, here is but what amazes me about Bhai Vir Singh is that it's a woman.
Yes.
She leaves the house. She questions. So it's I have a whole chapter on that, just analyzing the poem as Sikh existentialism, how Sikh existentialism is illustrated in this poem. And it's really a very, very, very significant, very, very philosophical poem, because she goes, who am I? She's feeling, she does this anxiety that we have. I mean, you read Heidegger and so forth, we are humans. We are not gods and we are not stones. So to be human is to have that anxiety. It is if we didn't, we would not be humans. And so what is this anxiety? How do we overcome it? And he brings, just as Surinder Veer has been saying, the Guru's word. It's this kind of this duality when we don't see ourselves one with the other. And that's why it's in that opening, the one where I read, the stars are up there, the moon is up there, and the lake is down there. These are not two divided worlds. These are, they reach for each other. This reaching out to one another, that's very important. And I think that's that whole notion of home, ego, I am who I am, and you are somebody else. So he really brings, it's really Guru Nanak's philosophy that the ego is at the heart of this anxiety. And once we get rid of it, and he shows it through the woman, she goes to the lake, she leaves her house. I mean, that's very important to think about it. When do women have that freedom to leave their chores and leave their families and so forth and think about themselves? We are so busy. Just think about ourselves even today. We live in a very mechanical time. I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. Where is the luxury? Who am I? What am I? What is life all about? And then she goes to the lake and she sees the lake is all calm and beautiful, but she isn't. So she sees herself as really different and a total contrast. And he presents her gestures. She's looking up and down. Her eyes are going like this, He really portrays how her mental anxiety is reflected in her body, in her facial expression. She's pale, right? Ande vargi, zardi, like she's yellow, like of that egg, He really, the analogies that he uses are quite phenomenal. And so you see her going through all that pain and angst, but she comes to this lake every time. She sees a little bit, and then ultimately she sees the blossoms. So it's kind of, she sees what she's really experiencing is this kind of growth. There's nothing on the lake, and then there are little buds, then they grow up, and then there is this keda. And that's when she sees the blossoms, she kind of realizes she is one with the blossoms. Keda, hoi ape. The blossom. She becomes a blossom herself. So she learns from nature. So nature becomes kind of the intellectual source, her metaphysical kind of awakening. And I think the last words in the poem are that, if I may, what is it? Sutta kheda uda jagaya, khede rog jamaya. So whatever is, so we all have the joy in us. And that's what Guru Nanak says too. To me, this is Sikh scripture. The joy is here, the ecstasy is here, but something has closed it off. And that's our individuality. It's our selfishness. I want this. And we do all that. I want money. I want this. So it's running after these egoistical pursuits that we really miss what is deep inside. And I think he's showing that. He's kind of through his poem after poem, exegesis after exegesis. It's really the basic, we are joy. It's the joy is here. How do we open up? How do we become that blossom? Keda, and that poem, really, people should read it. I reread it, and I want to thank Inni. I literally, sorry to admit, but I had not read it in 30 years. And I reread it last night, and I felt like the little young, youthful person I was once upon a time. He does that even at our age and so forth. It's the same emotions that he brings out. So, I mean, I could go on with this poem, but anyway. So,
how does he do that? How does he do that? That all of a sudden, in Preet Veena, when I'm reading it, I'm actually that woman sitting in that lake, and I'm feeling those pangs, like I'm there. It's through his writing, like you say, you became youthful, you became that. How does a poet do that? How does he enable one to feel right there that this is happening to them? And it's not the other. It's like me. I'm sitting on that lake. What is that I'm sure there is a literary word, Nikki, or there is something there to be able to transport a reader to that level?
That's a really, really good question. And that, I mean, if I were to think of a philosopher, it's Tolstoy, who said the artist is infected. It's like giving a disease. You become contagious and you pass it on to the reader. So he has something within him, which he's passing it on. And so I would say with Bhai Vir Singh, because I've been kind of thinking about him all these years, one is his poetic genius. He just has it, the language that he uses. Simple language, chatti, like Mari, the moon kind of has a little peak at the lake. It's a simplicity of the words. This is not using, he's not doing, Surinder said it very beautifully earlier, they didn't care about anything. It came from within him. And that's what he's writing. And so I think it is his sensitivity to language, to his vastness, as we said. He's read so much, so he has images left and right at his fingertips. And 3, it's his philosophy. Because what you see ultimately, this woman's journey is what psychologists say, what Upanishads say, how she goes from this world of dualisms and dualities and so forth. There's a transition. He really paves through her 5 journeys to the lake. She evolves, she progresses. So it's a very structured. So it looks, so it's a very crafted work of art. So she starts out there full of questions. Then she kind of starts going into that semi-conscious world, how the ego starts to break. And she's like, oh, there are 2 moons. There's a moon up there and the moon down here and so forth. So that rational, logical world begins to crack open. And then she falls asleep. Remember when she goes and falls under it's a sunny day, bright. And she kind of goes into her unconscious world. And then after that unconscious world, she sees that totality with the world. And this is really the world of consciousness, semi-consciousness, unconsciousness to a full consciousness, a totality, that bliss, whatever we want to say. So there's also that kind of world that you hear from the Upanishads. But then there's also that world coming from the Islamic world, Zahir Batan come together. What is external? This is all Sufi approach to life and living. So what is there? Are esoteric teachings, there's something there, and exoteric. And with her, at that moment, the deep inside and the outside become one. So I think, your question is absolutely brilliant. What happens here? It's really hard to say because it's happening at so many different levels. It's just it's artistic, it's psychological, it's philosophical. Yeah. It's poetry, language. It's that's a miracle. Man, if there is magic, art, and these artists, these poets reach that. And that's what I find with the Guru Granth Sahib too. My first book was when I was an undergraduate at Wellesley College. That was my senior thesis, Physics and Metaphysics of the Guru Granth Sahib. And that thesis, that topic still resonates in my mind after all these years. Whatever I do, it's the same thing. How is this sophisticated, complex philosophy, doctrines rendered so beautifully, so artistically? That was, by physics, I meant the art, the analogies, the alliteration, assonance, consonants. And by metaphysics, I meant the philosophy, what is beyond, the transcendent, the divine, the all-pervasive reality. How is that expressed through this poetry? And I remember my teacher, she was a Christian scholar. There was nobody to teach me Sikhism at that point. And she would say, Nikki, physics means the pages and the book and so forth. It will not go as a title. And I said, no, Professor Mauri, I want it. I want physics and metaphysics. And I think that physical, that elemental, that body, and the deeply spiritual, the transcendent coming together. That's what the gurus gave us, and Bhai Vir Singh, keeping on their legacy, does that and brings us, as you say, closer and takes us farther and farther, vaster and vaster dimensions.
Yep. There's one aspect of Pidaji which is not really that well known, and that I discovered actually on my when I was reading Kamdi Kalai, and I saw his introduction chapter on Gurbani, on how to sing, which notes to play for each of his poetry. And I was astounded and I sent it to a person who studies music, and Gurmat Sangeet, and he says he had never seen something like this. So Surinder Ji, this part of Bhai Vir Singh Ji, Pitaji, of his deep knowledge of music.
Absolutely.
Where is that? Why is that not being studied? I mean, this gentleman who I sent it to, he said this chapter alone, I mean, with the annotation and what all was there, he said, I've never seen anything like this in my 15 years of study. So speak to that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I speak on that, I just want to add what Nikki ji was saying. This important thing, though, is that in Gurbani, Nikki ji, the thing is the person who gets connected, one who gets connected with the Akal Purakh, the knowledge, the knowledge just naturally enters your heart. I just want to make sure we all get it. So, Suniya deep lo patal hai hanji. Suniya tartaval akas hai. So, he was connected. He was, and if you read Rana Surinder Singh, which we've all read, and especially Udari wala chapter or Utari wala chapter, when the angel, picks the Rajkor, the hand, and takes her to different khans. Looks like Paisa had been to all the khans and everything. I just want to stress a point here that people who get connected and people who become one with him, knowledge naturally, everything, physics there, metaphysics there, whatever it is, it comes. The gurus never went to any school. Kabir never went to any school. Guru Nanak Dev Ji never entered any music school, and he was the biggest musician of ever, Coming back to Bhai Vir Singh Ji, and I wish I was there when he was there in the body form. When I wish maybe his voice must have been so beautifully sung, jo aapne gaande hone jadon. But it's amazing on the music depth. Let me just start off with saying how much he has written on this matter and his hold on this music by the chapter. He, there is a dictionary that he wrote on Shri Guru Granth Sahib Kosh, which is the dictionary. He actually made his grandfather's dictionary better. So unne aapki Kosh padhai unhone Guru Granth Sahib Maharaj ji. And towards the end of that, and you can even look it up yourself later on, there is a whole almost 100 pages written on music. How is Gurmat Sangeet different than us? What is music? What is the connection between spirituality and music? And then he has a big commentary on Ragmala. He goes in, I have never seen this depth anywhere, even from musicologists, I have never seen that. And I have been learning music since very young age in Bengal, got introduced to Rabindra Sangeet at a very, very, very early age. He talks about different Shiv Mat da Ragmala kedi hai, Hanuman Mat di kedi hai, how is our different Ragmala is there. Then but the best article I think he has ever written on music is one that is published in Khalsa Track Society and Khalsa Samachar also is an article called Ragan Shabad da Pav te Rag di Taseer, which if anybody wants to read it, I have a PDF copy of that, whereby he connects he has diagrams in that. He draws a diagram between what is Naad, what is Anahat Naad, what is Shabad, how does Shabad connects with Anahat Naad. And I can relate to it more because I teach and I learn. I'm a student and a teacher, both of music since a very early age. I understand the rags, how the feelings is, and what difference between Dev, Gandhari, and Shri and Kalyan and stuff, And I could relate to it much more than probably other people will be able to relate to it. And if that is not enough, if you really want to understand what Kirtan is, and even to this date, when I have to define what Kirtan is, I go to Bhai Chandaji's Saki in Guru Nanak Chamatkar, where Paisa really defines when there's a conversation that takes place between Bhai Chandaji, Indra Sen, Guru Nanak Dev Ji and Mardana, all four of them. sometimes two of them together, sometimes all four together, on what is kirtan and what is rag. What is rag must? What is kirtan must? What is just being involved in music? What happens to that music when Shabad comes in? His knowledge about music, his pakad on music, and he brings that everywhere. There is a chapter I remember in Kalgidhar Chamatkar, whereby this Vaishnavi sadhu visits from Ujjain, he has a certain picture of a fakir, of a guru. He thinks that kapde paaye hone dusre male baithe hone kidre fakiran di, and when he sees the Kalgidhar Pita on a horse, और लगाई हुई कलगी तो शिकार तो वापस आए, and when he sees him doing kirtan the next day in Yasa Diwar, and how beautifully that chapter will bring tears to your eyes when you read it. Mentions the Shabad, the Rag, and I believe personally, though you cannot connect it with the Shabad unless you know the musical aspect. And in that article of the Shabad de Pav the Rag di Tasir, which he explains that how certain Shabads found themselves in Sri, how certain Shabads were found itself under Dev Gandhari and not under Kalyan, but under Bihagada, and his depth of understanding, and more than Didi, his depth of understanding, his connectivity to Akal Purkh, he was a connected soul. And if you read, especially on the music, Bhai Chandaji di Saki, and also the Khand Jade Hand Jade, how the music, and look at the chapter in Rana Suraj Singh, especially Udari wale chapter the, when the lady reaches the Taram Gyan Khand and the Bachari puchti hai ki pahunch gaya Sachkhand, to kende nahi, kende itna celestial music hai, this is not Sachkhand, kende nahi hai Gyan Khandi wale, Sachkhand nahi hai. So मैं की कवा होना बारे दीदी की कह सकता ये कहना की कवे उना बारे उना दी म्यूजिक दी डेप्थ बारे जेड़े पढ़दे हैं उन्हां नूं पता है और हर चैप्टर विच ही म्यूजिक दे एस्पेक्ट आएगा गुरु नानक चमत्कार कलगीधर चमत्कार whichever chapter you read. So,
but I know that, Surinder, but it was actually the way that we all, Nikki, we write poetry. You write poetry, I write poetry, but that sensitivity that we want our poetry sung in that rag, on those notes, which I found was, quite amazing. And it was taking it to a different level. That's how that he wanted it sung. But Surinderji, I've been receiving a lot of messages here that people are requesting that PDF. So if I may, whenever after the webinar, if you could send us that PDF, we will send that to all our listeners so that they may also have it, because there are quite a few comments here which I am seeing. And this is also to all our audience that is listening. If you have any other questions that you would like to ask the panelists, please go ahead and put it in the Q&A section, and I will get to them. Nikki, there are so many dimensions of this, of Pedaji, but if there's this, and his writings, and I'm not even going into his work in the social fields and the institutions he set up, because I don't want to cover that today. I'm just focused on his writings. If there was one particular, from his vast repertoire of writing, if there is something significant that has impacted your life personally, that one thing or that couple of things that has made, and you would want to share that with your audience, that would be great.
Oh, Inni, that's an impossible task. His poetry is what I must say has drawn me. And Surinder, Rani Raj Kaur's, that's a whole chapter in my book, The Feminine Principle, where I do the mystical journey, the 5 khans of the Japji Sahib elaborated through Rani Raj Kaur's journey. So I totally, so it could be the khans. I really don't know where to, his poet, this from the, my Cosmic Symphony was like taking his earliest poems and his last final poems, Meri Sanya Jio. So there's lots, and I'm totally at a loss. I don't know every bit I pick up is there's something inspirational about it. I think it's the momentum, the poetic momentum, the language. It just puts me in my world. I have to admit, I came to America when I was very young. I really did not have anybody to speak Punjabi with. And his poetry kind of just sustains me any bit. Well, how about we look at one poem? And that goes with my... what did I say? That I made my 7 points, his contemporary significance. And one area I did not mention was our everyday life, because to be in the moment, that's very important to Bhai Vir Singh. We are always here, we are today. What are we thinking about? Lunchtime, later I will do this, or I didn't do something. So it's either regrets or future. What about the moment now? And there's a little poem, Bijliyan de Har vich hegi hai, the second, Aj. Should I read that?
Please. But Nikki, if you're going to read it, but then you need to also translate it, because I know there's an audience there who would not be able to appreciate that. So, we don't need word, but the essence of it.
The essence basically is... no, I want to read you. It's just so beautiful.
No, I want you to read it, but then also explain it to us.
It's so simple. It's a simplicity. You see, that's what draws me. It's not, kal chuki hai beat, vaston dur nasai. So yesterday has gone. Okay, I'll read my English translation.
No. I want you to read I want to read the original, but also then explain it to us.
Okay. But anyway, so it's really, yesterday is gone, far out of our control. Tomorrow is still away, not yet in hand. Today is with us. And what do we do it? Filled with worries though, caught up in yesterday and tomorrow, we let today go for naught. So hold on to today tightly. Let ambrosial elixir, sip it slowly, absorb it, get high on it, immerse yourself in its divine radiance. So that's really the message, so rather than yesterday, tomorrow, to be in the moment. And that's what we hear, which we cannot do. If you want to find bliss, if you want to find joy, it is really to experience right now, the presence. And he's making us, he's drawing our attention. And so nicely, what can we do about yesterday? It's gone. Why regret? Why worry? I didn't do that. Or I should have done that. And tomorrow is far away. It's not in our control. So this is what we have. Make the most of it. And this is for my youngsters, for my students, for each of us, at any stage, every day. Hold on to today. Get high. Must, to be high, to be intoxicated. Life is intoxicating. Sip it slowly, go slowly, relish it. And that's what, that's the whole Guru Granth Sahib, right? Guru Granth Sahib. Thal vich tin vastu payo sat santok vichar. Here is the platter with sat santok vichar. Jeko khave, jeko punche, dista hoy udhar. So we have to not just eat it, go to McDonald's and gulp things down. Savor that knowledge, savor the truth, the knowledge that's been given, savor the contentment and reflection. That's very important. So what you're doing, Inni, the way you're bringing people together is really important, because we need to reflect. We need to go to these texts. Otherwise, they're there. So, and that's to get high on it. Absorb it, drink it, make it a part of your body. Here again, the body comes up. All the 5, whatever 7, 8 points I made, they're all visible right here. Absorb it. Take it inside you, in your body, make it a part of your bloodstream. This is knowledge, just not up here. Get high on it. Enjoy it. That's the whole aesthetic. Immerse yourself in its divine radiance. And that radiance, the divine, the oneness, get immersed in it. So if you could just think of it every moment, how good it would be. So that's my little message.
Well, Nikki, the chat box is lighted up, because the audience wants you to read it in Panjabi. So please.
Kal chuki hai beat, vaston dur nasai, talak ajay hai dur, nahi vich hathan ai. Palak ajay hai dur, nahi vich hathan ai. Aj asade kol, vich par fikran lai. ਅੱਜ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਪਰ ਫਿਕਰਾਂ ਲਾਈ ਕੱਲ ਭਲਕ ਨੂੰ ਸੋਚ ਅੱਜ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੁਫਤ ਗਵਾਈ ਕੱਲ ਭਲਕ ਨੂੰ ਸੋਚ ਅੱਜ ਇਹ ਮੁਫਤ ਗਵਾਈ we let it go for naught hey ਸੰਭਾਲ ਇਸ ਅੱਜ ਨੂੰ he's talking to us this is kind of asking us ਸੰਭਾਲ ਇਸ ਅੱਜ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਬੀਤੇ ਮਹਾਰਸ ਪੀਂਦਿਆਂ ਇਹ ਬੀਤੇ let it pass maharas pindya the great elixir let it go let it pass let it move with everything maharas pindya har ras vich matte har ras vich matte get intoxicated with divine ras vich matte khiviyan har rang har kirat chaundiyan with immersing in its chaundiyan in its radiance that's how we should be so I really one thing so this is it and my basic one yes I should have mentioned which I loved from day one I don't know I still remember I don't know where I read it wah wah choj tere mere saiyan wah wah choj tere mere saiyan tere geetan diyan tenu vadhaiyan tu ho geet sangeet te swad tu ho geet you are the song tu ho geet sangeet te swad ras rasiya te aap rasal I mean where do you get this Inni
you don't I mean this is a high this is literally
this is what you get
like that who thinks like that who writes like that and it's that this constant falling in love over and over again and that's what he does to me it's like I cannot believe this. He's done it again. He's done it again. He's done it again. And that's where, this journey from Bhai Vir Singh to Paisa Bhai Vir Singh, and now it's just that he's just my Pilaji, and that's the end of it. So Surinderji, tell us about you, but what is it what particular aspect of his writing has moved you and that you want to share with all of us?
I think the aspect, of course, it other than chamatkars and everything, but I want to start off with saying that ki Gurbani, which according to the, jo Guru Granth Sahib Maharaj, the jo spirit, what is that is ki the goal of human life, the purpose of human life is that before you leave this world, you know your creator, naam naal relationship todi bane. And Guru Granth Sahib Maharaj di Bani, which one more thing is important though is we believe that you need jude hoye in the sangat, jude hoye in the satsangat. When you hold their hand is the people who get you there. And I think the work that he did on Santhya, I think that is, probably the most important deen that he has to the Panth and to the entire world. Or jinane people who have not read that and will leave this world without reading that will have missed out. I cannot even tell you what you guys have missed out on that. Santhya is something is so special, especially the annotation of Japji that he did in the beginning. It is so full of love. Itni depth hai ude samjhan vich. To me, he is like somebody who connects you to Akal Purkh Vaheguru and your Guru so that your purpose of coming here. And let me remind the audience who's listening today ki Gobind Bhajan bin birthe sab kaam, Jon Kirpan ke nirarat dam. So we can read, we can do hundreds of seminars, ultimately you have to listen to what Paisa Bhai Vir Singh ji's writings reflect upon, which is and what Nikki ji said a second ago, which is to get connected with that divine spirit. Oh hai naam. And since Nikki ji read it, let me just read out 2 sentences from Santhya. And I want to read a lot more, but Inni ji, you said ki Punjabi shayad logon na samajh aaye, but I just want to give you an example of love that reflects in Santhya though.
So Surinderji, please read, but then also explain.
Okay, sure. But inni koi mushkil nahi hai, people will understand. here is explaining he's explaining Japji ਦੀਆਂ ਉਹ ਲਾਈਨਾਂ you know ਸੱਚ ਨਾ ਵਡਿਆਈ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤ ਵੇਲਾ ਸੱਚ ਨਾ ਦੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕਮੈਂਟਰੀ ਹੈ you know ਵਿਆਖਿਆ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੇ ਲਿਖਦੇ ਹਨ ਕਿ ਉਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਪ੍ਰੇਮੀ ਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦੀ ਤਾਕੀਦ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ ਕਿ ਦੇਖੋ ਕਦਾਚਿਤ ਬਾਣੀ ਵਿਸਰੇ ਤੇ ਬਾਣੀ ਗੋਦ ਮਾਤਾ ਦੀ ਹੈ ਨਾਮ ਤੋਂ ਜ਼ਰਾ ਸ਼ੋਕ ਘਟੇ ਝਟ ਬਾਣੀ ਸਹਾਰਾ ਦੇਵੇਗੀ ਜੇ ਬਾਣੀ ਛੱਡ ਬੈਠੇ ਤਾਂ ਕੋਦ ਅਲਟ ਚੁੱਕ ਵਾਲੇ ਕਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਹੱਥ ਪਾਓਗੇ ਬਾਣੀ ਦੀ ਗੋਦ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਾਮ ਨੂੰ ਖਿਡਾਓ can you put it better than that who can say anything better ਬਾਣੀ ਦੀ ਗੋਦ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਾਮ ਨੂੰ ਖਿਡਾਓ ਜਦ ਕਦੀ ਫਰੋਟੀ ਲੱਗੂ ਜੋ ਜਿਗਿਆਸੂ ਨੂੰ ਅਨੇਕ ਵਾਰਾਂ ਲੱਗਦੀਆਂ ਹਨ ਤਦ ਬੜੀ ਬਾਣੀ ਬਚਾ ਲੇਗੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਕੋਈ ਠਾਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰੇਗਾ ਇਹ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵੱਡਪਨ ਹੈ ਸਾਡਾ ਇਹ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਪੈਸੇ ਕਮਾਉਣ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਇੱਥੇ he was not ਅੱਜਕੱਲ the books are written on you know how many it sells and what rating they have and who's going to read it and let me tell you Inni ji ਕਿ ਜਪਜੀ ਦੀ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ annotation ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸੰਥਿਆ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਈ ਹੈ if you leave this world without reading that agar if somebody does not have the time to read the entire Japji di annotation ਅੱਜ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸੁਣਦੇ ਪਏ ਹਨ ਮੇਰੇ ਹੱਥ ਜੋੜ ਕੇ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਅੱਗੇ read the at least the ਮੂਲ ਮੰਤਰ ਦੀ annotation that Bhai Sahib did you know you will get connected just with the word ek onkar di annotation ਤੋਂ how beautifully he explains brings in so many things from different places together. And one more thing, Inni ji, I want to point out, and it's very important though, and you said that in the very beginning when you started saying that, how is his writings relevant today? How does it resonate to present world? Bhai Sahib is the only author that I know of, and I have read many translations of Guru Granth Sahib Maharaj di Bani diyan, who has a special section on after every commentary though, and it's called Sadhan Pak. Which is sadhan pak mane sadhana da pak keda why do I have to say ek onkar again what is the benefit of saying nirvair again and again what is the benefit of saying saibhang again and again and Bhai Sahib has a special section after everyone and he explains the benefits and to end the whole thing santhya de first volume te Dr. Balbir Singh ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ brother last meeting that he had before he passed away there is a difference between explaining Gurbani and difference between experiencing Gurbani you know there is a difference between understanding what the words mean Didi and writing it down what it means and there is a difference between when you have lived that there's a big difference and there is a Panjabi word as we use karde hain bada us word da naam nig hai nig Punjabi the word it's hard to explain that in English the closest word I can find is probably warmth you know but it's way more than the warmth that Dr. Balbir Singh ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸੰਥਿਆ ਦੇ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਮੁਖਬੰਦ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ ਦੀ annotations ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ ਦੀ ਨਿਗ ਮਿਲਦੀ ਹੈ ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ ਦੀ warmth ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਅੱਖਾਂ 'ਚ ਅਸਰੂ ਆ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹਨ ਢੁੱਲ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹਨ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ Japji ਦੇ word ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ move ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ read his annotation on the Amul wali podi and read his annotation on what hukam is and there is no way you will not get connected so to me the most important work that he has ever done better than any chamatkar series or any poetry because as a Sikh ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਡਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਰੋਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕਨੈਕਟ ਕਰਨ ਆਏ ਹਨ ਜਨ ਪਰਉਪਕਾਰੀ ਆਏ ਹਨ ਉਹ ਤਨਵੰਤ ਕੁਲਵੰਤ ਪਤਵੰਤ ਹਨ ਉਹ ਉਸ ਰੂਪ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਏ ਹਨ ਸੰਤ ਰੂਪ ਵਿੱਚ ਯੈਸ ਕਵਿਤਾਵਾਂ ਲਿਖੀਆਂ ਹਨ ਯੈਸ ਨਾਟਕ ਲਿਖੇ ਹਨ ਯੈਸ ਫੈਮਿਨਿਜ਼ਮ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਹੈ ਚਮਤਕਾਰਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਸੀਰੀਜ਼ ਲਿਖੀਆਂ ਹਨ ਸੂਰਜ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਸ਼ ਨੂੰ ਐਨੋਟੇਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਆਏ ਹਨ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਜੀਵਨ ਸਫਲ ਕਰਨ ਉਹ ਆਏ ਹਨ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਲਾਈਫ ਤੋਂ ਅਗਲੀ ਲਾਈਫ ਤੇ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਐਂਡ ਸੰਥਿਆ is such an important part in that though I do not have words needed to express gratitude mera andron that what Bhai Sahib has done to the ਇਹ ਸਾਡੀ ਬਦਕਿਸਮਤੀ ਹੈ If we don't read that, most Sikh Sangat is probably not aware of that. But ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੜ੍ਹਦੇ ਹਨ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ, ਉਹ connect ਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਨ. ਆਸਾ ਦੀ ਵਾਰ ਦੀਆਂ annotation, ਜਪਜੀ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੀਆਂ annotations, and unbelievable work and unbelievably emotionally written work.
I remember, Surinder Singh, when I had tried to attempt to look at the Lama Bani and the Utaknan, I read the essay, which was before the Lama Bani, and that essay was so powerful for me. I mean, in one line, in a couple of lines, and this is a thought, and I'm paraphrasing, which he writes. He says, "You will not be able to understand the beauty of Gurbani, what the Lama truly means, until you don't understand what the position of the woman is." He said, "Aurat is this, she is the soul of a woman, of the jutti. You still take the jutti and you take it to the house. You leave it outside the house, but you go in. So the shoe can be seen, but the sole of the shoe is never seen. It's only used." And he said that is the position of the woman. Now, when you look at what Bani has done, what the Guru has done, and what the Lama is in that light, you will be able to understand the depth of Bani. And then at the end of this this essay which he writes, and he said, "Lama is the Bani, is the diamond that pierces every other Bani." So I am still trying to get the grasp of what is it. I have written about Lama, I have translated it, but I know categorically I am not at that stage where he is seeing that this is that diamond that pierces every other diamond. I am nowhere there. And I remember when I had finished working, or not finished, I had said, okay, I've studied Sid Ghosh with him, and I'm saying it was just an incredible 2.5 or 3 year journey. I said, I'm going to put the book down. And as I was closing it, my eye went onto the right-hand side of the page, and it was the Lama Bani. And just in the word, har peherli lam, that word lam, which I understood as round, he had like an 8-line meaning of that word.
Correct.
Just like, what? And I was back to that place. So his santhyas but those are for the seekers. Those are the ones who really want to understand and want that sweetness, that depth. It's a stretch. I mean, Surinderji, I can tell you, it is literally, when you are absorbed in that, you don't know, din raat, you forget. You don't know it's day, it's night, you are hungry or not. Everything just goes away. And that is what your focus is. But I have a question here, which is a very important question. And I think, Nikki, you would probably be the best to answer that. How would you categorize Bhai Vir Singh's literary journey? Are there distinct chronological phases in his writings? And how do we see him develop spiritually through his life? This is Guru Karan from Seattle who has asked this question.
I really am not an expert on this. I've just been reading his poetry. I know the early poetry, there's something very simple, beautiful about it. And then later on, when I look at Mere Saiyan Jio, it's much more philosophical and it changes. It's just much more complex. But I think the same vibes are there throughout. And I think it's like, all of us, do we really change? Do we really transform? I mean, he had such a wonderful childhood. Both his grandparents were so scholars, totally immersed in the Sikh world. So he just kept absorbing more and more and more, I would say. And then he went into the novel phase. I think one of the earliest things was Rana Surat Singh, which he completed in 1905. And then came a whole set of short poems. And those are very beautiful lyrics. And that's what I have been looking at. And then towards the very end, and is Mere Saiyan Jio. But I see the same, to be very honest with you, his aesthetics is the same. His philosophical world becomes a little more complex. But I cannot see no real points, which I can, that's me. I really have not worked on his biography. So
I like to, yeah, go ahead. No, I like to add something after you're done, Nikki.
No, go ahead. No.
So just chronologically, but he's also one of the few authors, Didi, on this, chronologically gal karde basi. Gurbani diyan, he wrote one Santhya series came later, earlier in his career, he wrote a book called Panj Granthi Shtik. There is another book that he wrote on Japji the annotation. So there are two Japji's annotations Paisa wrote. One in the Panj Granthi Shtik, which was written approximately 20 years pale. And how he has developed from the Panj Granthi Shtik to the Santhya, he criticizes his own work. He criticizes his own work in Santhya and said, "Nahi, Panj Granthi Shtik inj likhya si, but I've changed my mind. I've grown." So yes, there has been a progression from the articles and Chamatkar series to Lake. Santhya probably was one of his last one because we couldn't finish it. And that's why we have those 3 small books where you read the Lavandir translation, Santhya Nek Baniya, which is after the Sorat Rag, the Agge Jada portion Jada hai. So yes, he is one of the few authors who has written on a single subject matter probably multiple times. And he goes back and he discusses that and says, "Nahi, main likhya si pehle, but I think I was wrong. I think this is better than." So that is also takes a lot out of you, Didi, to say that to about yourself, and says that about him also a lot. So
about a couple of years, I think 3 years back, when I was at the Bhai Vir Singh Southern in Delhi, I was speaking to the director, Sardar Mohinder Singh ji, and he says, "Inni, I have some great news to share with you." And I said, "What is it?" And he said, "We have just found his notes, his translation of Homer's Iliad." I said, "What?"
Yeah, he told me that.
And I was like, "I cannot believe this." And I said, "You have just found it?" He said, "Yeah, we just discovered it." And I was like, "When are we going to get it?" And he says, "We just take your time. We're going to put it out there in the Khalsa Samachar. We're trying to figure out how to do it." But the man, and that's what it is, he knew there was so much that we don't know. And yes, with all his writings, all what he's written, there's still a lot we don't know. But it is, Nikki, what Nikki said, he connects you. Nikki is through the poetry that speaks to her. Yes, for me, it is also through the poetry, but for me, it is also that he actually unveils each Gurbani principle and gives it to me. This is the way you need to think about it. This is the way you need, even in love. And, is this only, I think for me, there was a lot of, is there only divine love? Can we experience divinity, that divineness in a human love? And Nikki, you've talked about that in your poetry. You write about the ishq part. Can you explain that? And he very much in him, I have found, and I've also probably experienced the divinity of love in a human relationship. And it was actually through him that I was able to see that this is possible. Very much so. So Nikki, is there anything there that you want to talk to us about on that point?
And I think I see a question too, Gajinder's question. In his book, Mere Saiyan Jio, Bhai Vir Singh writes, "Supne vich tusi mile asanu, gal vakdi pai, please share with us Bhai Vir Singh's love for Vaheguru. So that's exactly what you're asking. That's what the question is. We're all thinking together here collectively. So that's what I'm saying, that the raison d'etre, from the beginning to the end, the whole poetry is about love. And it's really the love for the divine, whether we experience it today, whether we experience it through art, but that's where he's taking us. And the one, it's really comes to Ik Onkar, the divine reality is one. And that one is cosmos, whether it's the skies or the lake down here, the birds, whether it's the little tree or the rose that is talking with us. It's all a part of this multiverse, this very pluriversal reality. And Vaheguru is really the wonder of it. You know, the whole mood of the Guru Granth Sahib is this enchantment. The beauty, the greatness of the Divine One, our Creator who made us. So ishq, muhabbat, pyar, rang, I mean, there are infinite names for love in Bhai Vir Singh, and he's really emulating the Guru Granth Sahib. I mean, I don't think it's emulating. He's really absorbed it from day one. So it's a part of him, a part of his being, and that's what comes out. So whatever each of the poems, whether it's a veena player or Ras Rasiya Rasal, I mean, that's Guru Nanak. Ape Ras, you know, Guru Nanak has that same verse. I've done it. My hermeneutics of Sikh scripture, that's what I call Bhai Vir Singh. These papers have been published. These are articles published in volumes. So to me, it is really the divine love that he's expressing in his poetry. All of his art, all of his, whether it's a secular poem, sacred, there's no such distinction. We talk, oh, this is, and that love does not end. What does divine love mean? Let's think about it. It's just going in that direction? No, it is coming to fellow beings. You know, I'm reading, by the way, I love the Sakis, little Sakis. I'm reading the B40 Saki, and Guru Nanak is totally saturated with the divine, love for the Divine One. As soon as he sings his Shabad, he goes out to feed langar. So the love is not out there. See, this is what that's something I feel the Sikh world, we really need to connect. It's not going out there. It's coming here to our everyday world. It's biophilia, bio this world. It's other traditions that kind of, you know, look after death and so forth. And your attention is given to the heavens out there, which means you don't give a damn about the planet or your fellow beings or what happens to you. Can kill 3,000 people only because you can go and have your, you know, you can meet with God out there in the heavens. This is not Guru Nanak, and this is not Bhai Vir Singh. So Inni, your issue about love for the divine opens us towards love for everybody, for each other here, for the flower, for nature, for that child, for my students. So that's the love we talk about. And that's something we miss. And that's something, there's always fear. Any karna, oni karna. The whole thing is about love. This is our tradition. This is our legacy. And we have really overturned it. And I don't know where we get those fears and phobias, which was to get rid of all that. And when we love is true. It's passion. This is what gives us. Yeah. So I don't add, the sacred and the secular, the division, that duality, that polarization does not exist in Sikh scripture. That was not Guru Nanak. What happens is later interpreters, exegetes who were not that liberal, who could not understand, they are the ones who are creating these codes and codifications and really twisting his words and his message. So instead of openness and embracing everything, it's like, you know, we have to do this and do's and don'ts, and there's no do's and don'ts. And it's when we love, everything opens up. We do our best. That's where things come from. Sat, truth.
True. And if I may add one more thing to that, though, is what Nikki ji said right now is ki Gurbani, which the both forms have been accepted, as Nikki ji pointed out, the Sargun form and the Nirgun form. If one without the other is incomplete. And again, if somebody really wants to learn more about what Nikki ji just talked about, the love, read his annotation on the Ekum Karwale, those 20 pages in Santhya. And you will see that what the Nirgun form is, though, which is the internal thing, and the external part, which is seva, which is all over Gurbani, which is in the Oankar part of the Pehla one hai, the dusra jada word hai jada. That is what this Sargun part is. And Bhai Sahib explains that in Santhya. And one without the others is incomplete in Gurbani. You cannot love God without loving everybody around you, every part of nature, every part of his creation. And it's reflected in his writing, is reflected in Guru Granth Sahib Maharaj Di Bani. But yeah, so I just want to add that, yes, both forms are important. Both loves are important in the Nirgun and the Sagun form.
So if I may say then, so he continues, his fragrance continues, he continues to inspire the well-being actually of the individual. And when the individual and the humanity.
Yes, very right, Inni.
Absolutely.
We cannot divorce the two. You know, the individual,
100%.
that's where the ego comes in, and the opening towards humanity is that love for the divine, for fellow beings, for nature, for women, men and women, equality, not, you know, so it's really kind of, it's an expansive feeling and doing. It's just not, you know, thinking or feeling, it's a doing. And that's why the seva that you bring up, Surinder, is very crucial. That's a part of us. Langar, seva, all these are, you know, divine. And just think of Naam, Dan, Ishnan. Naam is remembering the one. That's the love for the one. Dan is kind of geared towards society. And Ishnan is the person, the individual. You cultivate yourself. So it's self-cultivation, social engagement, and the divine. And these are three interconnected. There's a semiotic relationship amongst the three, not either this, that, no. And we really need to, this is the message of Bhai Vir Singh, and this is the message of the gurus, and we really need to experience it. You know, we talk about things, we discuss it, and each of us, and this gives us power, this gives us confidence. This is who we really are, and opens us up to fellow beings. We live here in the West. We meet Christians and Hindus and Muslims and people from all walks of life, and we should be open to them.
Absolutely. Because
this is our message. Oneness does not circumscribe to the Sikh world or the Panjabi world. And that's why I think his, you know, whether he uses the Bible or the Sufis or Upanishads, and the Guru Granth Sahib too, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh gurus, all a part of the Sikh scripture. We really have a very liberal, very pluralistic legacy, and we need to get to be really in touch with it, absorb it, as he says, absorb it, live it, be high on it, you know, from Aj.
You know, Nikki, you mentioned Naam Dan Ishnan, and I want to pick up on that one just a little bit. We have a little bit of time left, but in Canton 30 to 32 of Rana Surat Singh, there's this beautiful explanation of Naam, Dan, and Ishnan. And he takes you on this journey of what Dan is through the intellect, through the buddhi, through the ruh, through all that, right? And he does that for Naam, and he does that for Dan, and he does that for Ishnan. And I was just reading something last night, and there's a sentence which he says, Naam Twanu, something to the effect, Naam connects you to Vaheguru, Dan connects you to the world, and Ishnan connects you to yourself.
Exactly. That's what I said. Yeah.
And it was like, and you said it today, and I was like, last night I read this. And it was mind-blowing that this Ishnan is actually within, that cleansing within. And until that cleansing doesn't happen, nothing flows. But so simply and so beautifully put that these are the three things you're going to live in this world. These are the three, and he then writes, without these three, these are the three things that you need to live in this world, to actually radiate in this world. And I was like, that was my last night. And I'm like,
can I just say that this was mine 2 nights ago when I was reading the B40 Janam Sakhi. That's where it was. Kept coming again and again in these Sakhis. And Guru Nanak mentioning that again and again. So so this kind of really connects Bhai Vir Singh, how close he is to the gurus, to the sacred, to our history,
Absolutely.
to our literature, to Sikh scripture. So this is really kind of the connecting point.
Yeah,
And that
Gurbani,
relates to why we relate so easily and quickly with him, So it's like knowledge coming. So thank you, Inni. That's really, really interesting.
thank you, both of you. How could I mean, this incredibly naive, far-off person be so intoxicated, in love with him, and to celebrate the day of my Pitaji with two people who love him as much as I do. There's nothing better than that. And I want to thank the two of you for humoring me and, to be with me on this day and really sharing with our Sangat. I hope our audience feels that we just didn't speak amongst ourselves, but we really do love his work. And he's made a tremendous impact, I know, on each one of our lives. So Nikki, we have a little bit of time. We just have about 3-4 minutes left. Any passing comments, thoughts which you want before we wrap up, for our audience? Or if you want to read a couple of lines of his work, I'm just whatever.
Will you read a little bit on the Kheda? Where is it? Okay. By the way, somebody had asked the question about Baba Cho Tere Mere Saiyan. It's in Ras Rasiya Rasal, that poem. That's to answer a question here. So this is the poem Jeevan Ki Hai, that Inni made me reread. So this is what I was reading last night. So here is a woman in agony, and finally she gets the answer. And so this is Bhai Vir Singh's telling her, Kheda te appa ik hoye, Lunu gai proi. Kheda te appa. Kheda is that blossom. There she sees those flowers blooming on the lake, a whole total blossom. Nothing is apart. They're all one. And here, seeing that, she herself becomes one of them. Lulu gai proi. Lulu, every little pore of her is beaded with that. Kheda dilda, the blossom of the heart. Kheda tanda, blossom of the body. Kheda sarvar wala, kheda of that lake. That sab khede ik roop ho gaye, khede paniya palan. Sab khede ik roop ho gaye, ik roop, ik onkar, ik roop ho gaye. Sab khede, tanda, dilda, lake da, appa, sara kuch ik ho gaye, khede paniya palan. All these borders of gender and race and ethnicity and cultures and religion. Khede paniya palna, heta uppar char chafere, ki andar ki bahar. Kheda hoi sari, ki batan ki zahir. Khede vadi aa gayi bahar. Anyway, it can go on and on. There is no difference. It's that really message of oneness. God, Ik Onkar, Guru Nanak's revelation, seeing that one reality. This is what he gives us. And you can pick up any poem. That's what we get. So where there are no borders, there are no divisions, and this is the world he opens up to. And so, Inni, once again, thank you for really celebrating it, to be able to.
Thank you, Didi. Thank you for having us, and thank you for
really
talking about him.
So. Myself, I need to open up to the prose of Bhai Vir Singh. I've been kind of focused on this side.
Surinder Singh.
Thank you for having, and I just, whoever is listening, I just encourage everybody ki tusi ek moka deo ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੀ life ਨੂੰ ਬਦਲਣ ਦਾ, and he has that ability to bring the Guru closer to you. And often he uses a word, Guru Nanak Chamatkar, the earlier chapters, which he called it, ki Sikh da Jeevan hazuri wala hai. What is a hazuri? He uses that word a lot. Hazuri means in presence,
Yes.
And the more you read about him, the more you read his writings, ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਆਪਣਾ ਜੀਵਨ ਹਜ਼ੂਰੀ ਵਾਲਾ ਹੋਏਗਾ, you will feel Guru Nanak closer to you. You will feel Kalgidhar Pita closer to you. You will feel that Japji is closer to you. You will feel Asa Ki War Di Bani is a part of you, is a closer to you. And that is what a Gursikh is supposed to do. That is what Sangat is. That is what Guru Arjan Dev Ji talks about again and again in Sukhmani, you know. The more closer to come to his writings, meri life se badal gayi hai forever since I was in my 20s, you know, and my children I see reading him, and I see my daughter going through that transition and using his work to teach his classes, her classes in English though. But all I want to say is though that if you want to get closer to your Guru, if you want to get closer to Gurbani, if you want to get the warmth of Gurbani, if you want to get the nig inside and Hazuri wala Jeevan, if you read his works, you will find him. You will find Guru Nanak very close to you. You will find Kalgidhar Pita very close to you. So close that you might be able to touch him. ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਅੰਦਰਲੀ ਆਤਮਾ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਛੂ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਇਤਨਾ ਕਲੋਜ਼ਨੈਸ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਆਏਗੀ। ਇਹ ਮੇਰੀ ਹੱਥ ਜੋੜ ਕੇ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਹੈ ਸਭ ਨੂੰ। ਐਂਡ ਦੀਦੀ ਆਈ ਵਾਂਟ ਟੂ ਗੋ ਕਿ I want to, some people complain कि कई बारी नहीं समझ आनियां जो too difficult. You can give my email address out, let them reach out to me. I will explain them. I want, even if one person, if I'm able to convince, and I always say this, कि some people say they're very busy. And I say, if you're very, very busy, and let's say you only have one book to read before you die, you say I have only time to read one book. And that book will be Guru Nanak Chamatkar. You know, and if you have 2 books, then it's Kalgidhar Chamatkar. If you have 3, then start reading the Santya series. But meri hai ki get by getting closer to him, you will bring Gurbani and your gurus very close to your heart. Una di nig, una di atma de darshan tonu karange ho, aur ਤੁਹਾਡੀ life forever will change, forever. And that's all. And thank you for having this thing. Thank you for having me here and saying my 2 words. And I'm so glad to meet Nikki ji for the first time. Thank you.
Same here. Yeah. Thanks to Manvinda for organizing us. Thank you, Manvinda. We wouldn't be here. I would not be here.
You know, I want to leave, before I passed on to Manvinder, there was, Pitaji, you know, there were lots of people who wanted to come and see him, you know, constant stream, and he met people at a certain time. And he would tell people that you don't need to come and see me. That's if right. You want to meet me, I will meet you in my books.
That's right.
And that's exactly what happened with me. And this my aunt tells me, you know, because she said, "Tu kitthe jami pali, and where would you have things?" She said, "But you've met him." And that's what he would say. He said, "You actually, the way your life has turned out has made Pitaji's words real to me, that people will meet him in the book."
Absolutely right.
So that's what I'm saying. So I met him through his books, nothing else. And Manvinder, on this note, may I pass this on to you, because we could continue on and on, but I know we have a time limit, and I want to thank Nikki so much, and Surinder ji, for just spectacular hour and a half of celebration. Thank you. Manvinder?
Thank you so much. I definitely cannot follow up or summarize this truly delightful conversation. On behalf of Sikri, I know everyone has kind of already said their thank yous, but I'll extend a thank you as well to all of today's wonderful panelists for their insightful conversation. I truly appreciated being a fly on the wall in this very impassioned conversation, and maybe even impassioned is not encompassing of what I got to witness today. I know in the comments there were questions about a recording for this webinar. As always, a recording will be available within 24 hours. And just to wrap today's conversation up, I would like to remind everyone that we will continue hosting our webinars in the new year. This is the last one of 2020, but keep an eye out for our first webinar of 2021, where we will be joined by Surinder Singh and guests to discuss the farmer protests against new agricultural laws in Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, and
You are
throughout
listening
India.
to Sickcast
And
by
lastly,
Sikh Research Institute.
don't forget to tune into
illuminating
the
every path.
Sickcast, a podcast produced by Sikhri, where we explore the various issues and events affecting Sikhs worldwide. Thank you again, everyone, audience, panelists, for joining in today. Today's webinar will be ending now. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.
Vaheguru
Why did you